YouTube is pissing me off. Now, I naively thought that it wouldn't be that hard to learn how to make videos and then to build and grow an audience over time, but it is proving that hard. And I'm wondering, is it completely just all my fault, or is it in fact YouTube? Is it the algorithm? I think it might be, but either way, is it possible to defy the odds and actually turn things around? So in this video, I want to discuss why I think YouTube is being unfair, why I think a lot of other people struggle to grow their channels, what I think can actually be done to improve the chances of YouTube success regardless. And if you're trying to grow your channel as well, I'd love to know what you think about these topics. I've been working part-time as an artist for a number of years, and I'm on a journey to become a full-time professional, and that's what this channel is all about. I'm documenting the journey, sharing my process and my struggles. You know, it wasn't easy. Like, when I first started learning to draw, I didn't have any talent, I didn't have any skill, I didn't know what I was doing. It took a long time and a lot of practice for me to go from a point of not really knowing what I was doing to producing something that someone would actually pay money for. You know, eventually people did pay money. You know, I created artwork, built a website, sold through that website, and yeah, things were looking up. And then things changed. The whole sort of social media landscape and society in general, who knows, but it became a lot harder for me to start getting my work out there. And I realised that I would need a YouTube channel. I'd need to get my face in front of the camera, show that I'm a human being, not an AI, that kind of thing. And well, here I am. Trouble is, as bad as it was for me to learn to create art, I needed to learn YouTube, and I'm not naturally witty and charismatic and great looking and good in front of a camera. So, you know, this was always going to be an uphill battle. So first things first, I know that I'm starting from like the bare bones, and I know that it's not going to be instant success overnight. I know that there's things to build towards. So yeah, we'll be keeping that in mind. But we've got to a point now where, you know, after plus 100 videos, my videos generally, like if you just look at the average of the last dozen or so, we're getting about 200 views. And I'm thinking, why? Why am I not getting 3,000 views? Or maybe why isn't one video getting 5 views, the next one getting 5,000 views or 5 million views? Like, what exactly is it that's keeping me in this range of views? So I think we all agree, if your videos are just unwatchable, uninteresting, boring, they're not going to get a lot of views. And so the first port of call, if your videos aren't performing well, is to look at what you're doing, take responsibility to see if there's anything else you can tweak. And ultimately, that's all you can ever do, because, you know, you're obviously not in control of algorithms or platforms, ranking systems, things like that. So yeah, just look at yourself, see what you can improve, and that should always be the first thing to do. But after that, you know, what do you do when you start noticing patterns, things within the YouTube platform that seem a bit weird and that seem to be constraining your growth? So I believe that YouTube is deliberately throttling channels. It's deliberately holding back certain channels from being able to grow and expand. And I've spoken to a few other creators about this, and we all kind of agree that there's just something there. So like, have you ever noticed, like, when you go to visit a channel and you scroll through their last, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 videos, they're pretty consistent. No, you know, they generally get, I don't know, 50 views or thereabouts per video, or maybe they'll get just 20 views or thereabouts per video. Maybe they get 200 views or thereabouts, kind of like what my recent ones seem to be getting. Or maybe they'll get about 2,000, or maybe they'll get 20,000, maybe they get 200,000. You know, and it gets quite consistent. And I think what's going on there, what we've discussed, is that basically YouTube is ranking your channel, and I think it's ranking it kind of based on past experiences. So basically, let's just say that I'm an E tier ranked channel. You know, YouTube has decided that, you know, my content is of low quality, but not the worst. You know, if I was an F rank, for example, then it would only ever allow me enough impressions on my videos to score me about, say, 20 views per video. But now I've kind of been bumped up into this kind of E tier. And obviously, you know, you could argue that, let's just say that a D tier would get 2,000 views per video, a C tier might get 20,000 views per video, a B tier, 200,000, and so on and so forth. So YouTube is basically looking at what you're doing, and it's throwing you into a value bucket. It kind of thinks like, right, I think that based on what we've tested when we put your video out into the wider sphere, that your content has about enough value such that we'll recommend it, or we'll give impressions, as they call it, to X amount of viewers and users of the YouTube platform, and then it will stop. So, what can you do? I've noticed that trying to modify your content and create something a little bit better than the last video doesn't necessarily equal better results. There's this idea that was sort of given to me that if you just try to make your videos 1% better each time, then eventually, after 100 videos, you'll have something that's 200% better than you first started, which is amazing. But I don't think that really works. I don't really think that just these incremental improvements is enough for you to kind of be taken out of your current value bucket and be placed in the next tier up. But the trouble here is you're relying on the YouTube algorithm to find you an audience, and it does a good job at doing that for the most part. If you're consistently putting out videos like me about art, then people interested in that topic are more likely to be recommended the types of videos that I'm putting out, rather than people who maybe, prefer videos on cats or fishing or something. So there is that, but you are relying on YouTube to present your content with the right audience, and from that it determines where basically the next 10 of your videos could end up. So if YouTube doesn't quite get it right, then that's it. You are very much beholden to YouTube's sort of search algorithms. And if you're kind of doing a sort of sub-niche, sort of a niche within a niche. So for me, for example, this isn't just how-to tips on, like educational stuff to do with art. This isn't necessarily about giving advice on how you can improve your art or your business or whatever it is. It's kind of me just kind of vlogging, but having more of a sort of a negative counterpoint, just pointing out, like this video, that things aren't easy. The point of it is so that people can relate and feel like, well, maybe it's not just me, maybe there's more going on here than meets the eye, and I shouldn't just beat myself up and feel like a loser if I try something and I don't succeed. I think that has utility. But that's a very small niche, and if YouTube doesn't happen to recommend that perspective to the types of people who enjoy that, and instead perhaps the people that they're recommending the videos to would prefer something a bit more positive and a bit more upbeat, and if that happens to resonate with them, then my videos aren't going to be hitting the mark. And so what can I do about that? With YouTube, it really does feel as though you need a really good amount of impressions, like not just have YouTube show your videos to a sample size of 50 or 500 potential people that might or might not click it, but you might need a million of times that your videos pops up in someone's news feed for them to consider, oh, that might be the sort of content that I might be interested in, and for you to then go away and get subscribers and build the audience that way. So the whole system kind of makes it quite difficult, and it does seem like if you've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and even if you're trying to improve it or have a slightly different take on it, once you're stuck in that ranking, you're going to consistently get the same amount of views. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's noticed that, at some point they kind of got stuck into a rut where they're constantly or consistently getting, around 50 views per video, or, just a dozen views per video, or, maybe 50,000 views per video. And it's like, well, why 50,000? Why not, the next view get 1,000, or why not, the next video get 1,000? Why not the next video get 500,000? It's always about that same amount. And I don't think it's necessarily to do with like audience saturation. So for example, this video, you could say, oh, well, there's only so many artists that would engage with this type of content. So therefore, you only have potentially, let's just say 100,000 people that would potentially like your content. So out of those, and out of the, the 10,000 videos that people could watch, why would they watch your one? I mean, yeah, there is something to do with like, audience behavior and audience interests. And if you're going for something that's very niche, then good luck getting, 5 million views on a video. But at the same time, I kind of try at least to feel like the ideas I'm presenting are broad enough that they could relate to anyone. I mean, this one isn't really going to be that good for people that aren't creating YouTube channels, but there are hundreds of thousands of people that are trying to create YouTube videos. And I think that in of itself, you know, could be useful, interesting to sort of like a broader audience. So when I then look at the stats and the stats come in and, you know, the views are down to sort of 20, I'm like, right, okay, well, that's obviously because I'm stuck in that value bucket. Not solely. I think a lot of people will push back and say, no, your video's boring, your content is long-winded and you're not getting to the point, or, you know, you're just, other subconscious things like you're not attractive enough, we can't trust you, we don't know you, you know, there's just these weird things that you can't necessarily measure. And you know, I'm a self-proclaimed anxiety sufferer, you know, like social anxiety. I know that even though it does obviously take some degree of courage, I guess, to just stare at a camera and talk for a while and not get any feedback, I know I'm not good at it. So I'm willing to take some accountability there, but equally, it's obvious no matter what, you know, whether you're a great presenter or you're not, that you do get stuck in these sort of value buckets, these rankings, and then breaking out of it's quite difficult. And it's not necessarily your fault per se if you can't. Obviously, the only thing you can do is to try and make better content. But, you know, what do you do if, you know, your video, you typically spend 5 hours making a video, for example, and then you go on to spend 15 hours making the next video, but you're still stuck in that kind of ranking, that bucket. You know, you have to then work out, is this worth the time? You know, was it worth me spending 3 times as long on a video if it kind of gets around the same amount of views? You know, or would it have been better just doing 3 separate videos of a slightly lower quality, less editing, stuff like that? You know, that's something to consider. And then there's this thing of YouTube incentivizing creators to keep coming back. Now, what YouTube seems to do is allow you to put your content out, you know, day after day after day, and then almost randomly, or sometimes in sort of these cyclical patterns, it will allow you to have a hit, you know, allow you to have something that goes viral, that gets shared with a wider audience. A few people I've spoke to have said that this is a deliberate tactic by YouTube for a couple of reasons. Firstly, that it's like a testing thing. They're testing to see, basically giving you an opportunity to see that if they did share your video with a wider audience, could it spike, you know, a higher amount of viewers on your videos, or actually is your content still as bad as YouTube thinks it is? So, you know, okay, YouTube's doing a bit of testing there in the background. There's nothing you can do about that. But perhaps also it's like giving you a win in order for you to kind of feel like the whole endeavor of creating content isn't a waste of time. Because if most people, which is true, most new people creating video content for the YouTube platform come into the platform and they notice that whenever they start a channel, their channel only gets a dozen views per video, you know, they're going to be disincentivized to even carry on. And then it just kind of degrades the overall kind of quality on the platform. I don't think YouTube necessarily wants to have channels start up, create 5 videos, realize that things don't work, and then just give up. And it kind of, you know, there's no point to YouTube being like a graveyard of dead channels. It's just not a good look for them. So what they apparently sometimes do is give you a spike in views, and that is kind of like a gambling addict on a slot machine, you know, pulling down the handle or pressing the button in order to keep, you know, trying to win the money, and then finally getting a payout. It's like, wow, I've actually got a payout. And, you know, the payout might not be the jackpot, but it'll be just enough for you to kind of think, see, you know, it is possible to win, and therefore I'll carry on. And it sort of incentivizes, you know, carrying on with the platform, even though, you know, you might not get anywhere. It might have just been a fluke. You might have had, you know, your viral outlier hit, and that was it for you. You know, YouTube's never going to give you another one. So yeah, that's what I've taken into account. And then there's this incentivizing ads. So if you're serious about YouTube and you're going and going and going, there's a chance after a while that you know, you'll consider ads being the way forward. And some people have sort of said to me that they've tried ads and actually turns out you know, you do have an audience. There are people that will enjoy your content, that will sort of like and subscribe off the back of the videos that you put out, so long as they see them. But in order to see them, you have to pay for it. It's a pay-to-play system now. And so perhaps the throttling, the low views, is a deliberate attempt by YouTube for you to consider ramp it up, to consider paying them money in order to boost your content. You know, so that's just something to be aware of. Apparently as well, like once you start getting close to like 1,000 subscribers, YouTube kind of pull back on your impressions so that you don't get quite as many people view and like and subscribe to your videos, because one of the two key components of getting put on the creator platform, which allows you to basically earn money from YouTube by putting your content out rather than YouTube earn the money, one of those criteria is 1,000 views. So there's an incentive for YouTube to keep you just sub of 1,000 if it thinks you're of a certain value. There's a lot of stuff like that going under the hood. None of this stuff is ever made clear when you start a YouTube channel. And it's only through doing it and speaking to other creators who do it and then just talking about it in the background and noticing these patterns as a kind of collective that you start to realize that it's not all about a direct correlation between the amount of effort that you put in and what you get back out of it. And I think that makes the whole system very difficult to understand. You know, people will say, you know, go have a look at the analytics. Let's look at the outlier video and see why that performed so well compared to other videos. And I'm not discounting that there's utility in doing that. But if YouTube just so happens to be having one of their, not funny 5 minutes, but just one, it's going through a testing cycle where it's kind of almost arbitrarily pushing out one of your videos, even if other videos had stronger metrics so far as click-through rates or watch time and stuff like that go. It just pushes out a video, and then you're looking at it, spending the next 12 months trying to get a hit like you once had, but perhaps staring at the analytics and trying to reverse engineer that hit isn't going to give you the answer. It might do. Like, I'm just putting the counterpoint across to say that perhaps it was a semi-random event, and you know, maybe it's just time to move on to the next video and not give it too much thought and get too hung up on this one thing, because you can completely derail a channel if you've been putting stuff out and you're getting 10 views per video, and then suddenly you've got something that's got like 10,000 views. You're like, right, okay, everything I did before was worthless and a waste of time. I'm going to focus on doing more of that thing that took off. But perhaps it wasn't a waste of time. Perhaps actually, you know, there was just something not quite right. Maybe the intro of those videos was just a bit too long-winded, or you just didn't get to the point. I mean, I know I've got loads of problems with you know, how I present myself and not getting to the point and stuff like that. And maybe that was all that was wrong. You know, put that video out a week later with a tweaked intro or a different thumbnail, and the whole video could have worked. So, you know, maybe it's not so good to use the metrics on these kind of viral outliers in order to dictate how the rest of your entire channel goes. And then for me personally, I'm just thinking about uncontrollable features of YouTube or videos or me in person that I can't change. So when I look at art content specifically, if I type in art vlog or, you know, art channels, there's a lot of stuff which I'm starting to notice a pattern here. So like something I notice is very popular and seems to have a consistently high viewership are these, they're called like cozy vlogs, cozy art vlogs. It's more the sort of female YouTuber kind of go about their day painting and chilling out and doing their thing. And it gets to the point where you sort of think, well, I don't look like these people. I don't act like these people. I don't think or have the same sensibilities as these types of people. Yet they're the people that I see consistently doing really well on these videos. That can be a limitation that is worth being aware of. You know, I can only do what I'm doing, and if what I'm doing just so happens to not resonate, you know, if, you know, statistically speaking, female presenters are going to be more liked or have a higher success rate on YouTube with specific audiences than male presenters, then that's just something I can't really control. I mean, I could put a wig on and some mascara, but I don't somehow think that's going to do much for my viewership. And it's the same with male content. Guys are going to geek out over tech and, you know, mechanical things, and they tend to be really super hyper passionate about it, and therefore guys generally are going to have a lot more success than women when it comes to tech. You know, you can't really fake that kind of passion. And then there's things like camera quality, audio quality. You know, you're kind of limited by what you can afford. You know, I can't afford like a super high resolution 8K top of the line camera. I have to basically record this on my phone. That's why it doesn't look so great. My mic is the only thing that I've kind of spent a bit of money on. I spent like, well, £85 or something on this little mic here, just so that the audio is acceptable, because I feel like with YouTube, everyone always says the audio needs to be even higher than the video quality, generally speaking. If you've got bad audio, that's it for your videos. So, but yeah, you're kind of limited there by financially what you can afford. You're just your general personality. Like, some people are very low key, low energy, just stoic, calm people that don't have a lot of expressiveness to their personality. And it's not necessarily that that's bad, that's just how they are. But when it comes to presenting content, you obviously need to be able to articulate and express yourself, and the more you can do it, the more excited and hyped up and extrovert you can be over content, the better it is, generally speaking, for audiences. Not everyone wants that, but I'm just saying there are things that make it somewhat easier if you are that way inclined. And so you're kind of constantly having to battle these characteristics that you might have, or these circumstances that you might be situated in, which you can't easily control or control at all. So what can you do about this? You know, you can't control the YouTube algorithm, you can't control its nuances. All you can do is put out content. So something I'm doing is I'm obviously trying to absorb as much feedback about how I can better the channel as I can. And sometimes I take on that feedback and then I test it, and then I come back and realise, actually, that didn't really work for me. But I think it's worth, at least if you have the option, to just listen to what people say. If people say, like, take the music out of that video, or maybe you need some music, or maybe you need some sound effects, or maybe you need this, maybe you should try that. It's worth maybe thinking, okay, I'll try that. Sometimes with feedback though, like, for example, this is a talking head video. I just want to do a big talking head monologue, putting across the idea that YouTube has some weird quirks to it, which is actually stopping your channel from growing, and it's not necessarily anything you can change. Or if you're wondering why you're getting stuck, it's not necessarily your fault or you're doing anything wrong. That's the idea here. So I don't really want to have like tons of sound effects, quick cuts, edits every 3 seconds. That might be more entertaining, but for me to put a video like that together, that's going to maybe take me 7 days, and I haven't got 7 days to create content. And, you know, obviously when you go to YouTube, yeah, good quality content, that's a pretty good measure whether something's going to be successful or not. But then there's also half the videos that come out onto YouTube aren't, you know, super high quality with, you know, 3-second edits and sound effects and music and, you know, glitz and glamour and all that kind of stuff. And so then it comes down to trying to just say something worth saying. Now, what I've said here about YouTube deliberately throttling channels, I don't think anyone, certainly that I've heard, has kind of said it, or said it in the way that I've said it, so far as, you know, sticking you in these tiers where you're kind of limited to, you know, around the 20 view mark, or around the 200 mark, or around the 2000 mark. And I mean, I still don't know if that's true. It feels true. And I still don't know if there is an effective way to then bump out of that, you know, to create the next kind of hit, or the next series of hits that is going to kind of take you up the next rungs and get you into the next category of viewership. Because it does seem, once you're there, like once you're getting 20,000 views consistently on videos, the chance of you then putting out another video, even if it's a bad video, going back down to 200 views, it's just not going to happen. You know, it might dip to 10k, but you're still in the tens of k category, tens of thousands of view categories. So So that's that. So I will try and take on feedback, and I might not necessarily implement it straight away. I might test out an aspect of it, because if 20 people tell you to do certain things, you can't just go away and compact that all into a single video, because then you don't really know what's going to work, what parts are working, what parts aren't. But you know, you can listen to the audience as best you can, and then as best you can implement what you can. I mean, I had an outlier video that got, at this point, over 13,000 views, and a lot of people recommended just little tweaks that I could do, literally action that day, like little tweaks to previous videos where they said, I think you should change the thumbnail on this one, I think you should change the title to this on that one, or in general, consider, you know, shorter title lengths, or, you know, structuring titles a certain way. You know, and I went back and I retroactively changed some of the videos that I had. So even though they're still probably not perfect, they are better than they were, and I think that's worth doing. It's worth considering, and then at least I can look back at the library and kind of feel as though, even though I feel like I'm not quite where I want to be, I kind of know that I've got some stuff that's nearly there, and that's good to know. And then there's stuff like building hooks and intros. I'm no expert. I know this whole YouTube thing is a big learning journey for me, as well as, you know, trying to figure out how to make a full-time art career. But I'm aware of other videos particularly that don't get to the point and have a, you know, you kind of switch their videos on and it's like, hey guys, good to see you again. Welcome to the channel. Now if you're new here, it'd be great if you like and subscribe the video. You know, your support helps a lot. And yeah, in the last video or some other video or something that you're not seeing right now that you have no knowledge of, I talked about X. And yeah, now I'm going to talk about Y. You know, and in that, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds, which are probably the most key, crucial parts of a video, it's all just waffle. And it almost surprises me when I do see videos like that, where a YouTube presenter will kind of do that whole thing and then they'll still somehow get like 10,000 views on that video. It's obviously because of other reasons which I won't go into, but yeah, it does feel like, you know, if you change that, you could go from 10,000 to 50,000, I'm sure of it. I'm no expert with this, I'm still learning. Like I say, I'm trying to take on the feedback, I'm trying to adjust the thumbnails, trying to adjust the titles, trying to look at making videos just at least a little bit more interesting in the first 10, 30 seconds or whatever it is. And then I think the biggest thing for me is just confidence in front of the camera, and that really is going to take a long time. I mean, that could take years, because, you know, you spend your entire life, decade after decade after decade, becoming the person that you are. If you're like me and you're in your 40s, you know, it's a big ask for me to be able to almost change my personality or my kind of relationship to sort of speaking out loud. Like if I don't have a lot of confidence in general, and I'm supposed to try somehow project that I do, you know, that's not just going to be a case of going away, producing 3 or 4 videos, and then suddenly I'm now confident in front of, you know, the camera. I can go out and do public speaking and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even people that generally are fairly confident in life, if you say, right, you're going to have to do some public speaking now, they completely freeze. They start sweating, they start panicking. Some of them can't do it. I remember speaking to this one woman once where she was asked to do just a short, almost like public, not even public speaking, but just speaking to her team at work about some new strategies that, you know, the work wanting to employ in the company. Normally the boss would do it, but the boss was away, so this other woman was asked to do it. She couldn't handle it. She got up in front of the podium, ready to give a little speech about, you know, how the company needed to change, and then she just decided she would run out of the room, run out of the building, get in her car and drive away. You know, like literally just try and get as far away. I mean, she probably then booked a flight, got on a plane, went to another country, you know, asked if she could get on the next space shuttle to the moon or something. Like, she was so phobic about giving her public speaking speech. And this was someone who, on the face of it, you know, looked quite confident, you know, very poised, you know, very well presented, good looking, all that kind of stuff. You'd think, what was she doing? Why would she have that reaction? So yeah, the whole idea of doing even this, even speaking in front of a camera, is difficult. And, you know, that's something, therefore, that can be worked on. I think the more that you do it, the easier it gets. And I think doing it more consistently helps. Like for me at the minute, I'm doing like a video every week. Sometimes I would do like 2 or 3 videos and then schedule them up, and then I might not do another video for a month. Trouble is, in that month, I kind of regress back to like not feeling as confident. So I think ideally doing more regular video content would kind of expedite this process of building camera confidence. So I feel like that's something that I want to go away and try. So when it comes to creating improvements, both in the art side of things and in the presenting side of things, I know I've still got a lot of work to do. And I'm not saying that the nuances of YouTube are the only thing that's stopping my content from reaching a wider audience and that kind of thing. Still a lot to do there. But there definitely does seem to be something not quite right. And I think at least knowing that might help me to sort of resist that urge to quit. You know, kind of if you feel the game is a little bit rigged, then you don't take it as personally, because you're like, oh, well, it's like when you do those grabby claw machine arcade games where you try and, you know, you're grabbing a soft toy or a teddy bear and you have this like mechanical claw that comes down, grabs the thing. That doesn't pay out all the time. Sometimes you get it right on target, you know, the crane comes down, grabs the soft toy, picks it up, and then it just drops it. And you don't want to feel as though your value as a human being is tied up to whether or not on that occasion the claw is actually going to grab the toy and actually put it in the bucket and allow you to take it home and win it. You know, sometimes the system is going to allow you to have wins, sometimes the system isn't, and it's very useful, I think, to realise that you're not 100% accountable, and therefore you shouldn't take it all personally or beat yourself up if things are not working. So I appreciate this might be a message for me personally to make me feel a little bit better for the fact that I'm not succeeding on the sort of scale and level that in an ideal world I'd like. But I think it's true for a lot of people that are trying to do a thing. They're going out there, giving it their all. And I've seen loads of people that do this, loads of small channels, you know, that have about 100 subscribers, and they typically get like 40 views on a video if they're lucky. Maybe you're not doing anything that wrong. Maybe you're putting something out that is worth doing. I mean, only you could be the judge of it. And I think it's worth taking into account that, yes, people will say, add more special effects, glitz and glamour and edits, and boost your video up so it looks like a Hollywood production that took like 5 years to make, and then maybe you will have that hit. But equally, let's just get real. You don't need all of that. There's evidence of creators that don't have all of that and still manage to build and grow an audience. So if they can do it, surely you can too. So anyway, hope that was useful, and let me know what you think, and I hope to see you again in a future video.